All right, Rabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors, our Talmud Torah sponsors. Our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Teves. To thank Yoel Sara Kelman for dedicating all of the shiurim and drashos this month in honor of the birth of their daughter, Oriya Tahel, and in the hope that in the merit of this bracha, that all of the couples davening for children will Hashem have their tefilos answered bekarov. To thank Teri Czinn for dedicating the shiurim this month in honor of their grandchildren, Adin, Tzvi, and Naftali, Moshe. Shirley Elbaum Family in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Gerald Elbaum, whose yahrzeit is today. Yaakov Kopel, Bennett Goldberg, R Menachem. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an Leah and the family a nechama. We thank our week of learning sponsors, Paul and Kathy Pollack, for dedicating the week of learning in memory of Paul's sister, Leah Bas Shmuel, whose yahrzeit is today. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an Aliyah and the family a nechama. And we have a beautiful Daf Yomi sponsorship today, Bennett Goldberg, in honor of Alan Wiseman. Beautiful. So, acknowledging what a bracha it is to know you and have your gemilas chasadim bestowed upon me. Beautiful. It's a beautiful sponsorship. Shkoach Bennett, Shkoach Alan. All right, with that, let us begin. We have a magnificently beautiful daf ahead of us today. Also a lot of ground to cover. Emeretz Hashem. So today's daf is daf Gimel, but you would not know that from where we are starting. So we are starting on Beis Amud Beis. Emeretz Hashem, the middle of the daf. The middle of the daf, right at the two dots. More towards the top of the daf, but Emeretz Hashem it'll move. Krachim hamukafin chomim mios Yeshua benun korin b'chamisha. So remember again, the Mishnah said walled cities. So I should say cities that have a wall from the times of Yeshua benun. We'll read on the 15th. So it says the Gemara Minhani Mili. From where do we know this? So Amar Rava da Amar Kra al kin haYehudim haprazim hayoshvim ba'arei haprazos. So the pasuk in the Megillah says, therefore the Jews of the Prazim who live in the Prazos, you celebrate Purim on the 14th of Adar. Prazim are unwalled cities. So it says the Gemara, the Jews who live in the unwalled cities will celebrate Purim on the 14th. So mid the Prazim ba'arba'asar, mukafin b'chamishasar. Since the Prazim are celebrating on the 14th, therefore it must be the walled cities are celebrating on the 15th. So in other words, we're backing into this a little bit. In other words, we know from the Megillah that the Megillah itself says that Purim is celebrated on the 14th and the 15th. We know that. So the Gemara is saying from the fact that the Megillah explicitly says that the Jews of the unwalled cities will celebrate Purim on the 14th, that must mean that ultimately, again, the Jews of the walled cities are celebrating on the 15th. Says the Gemara, Ve'ema prazim ba'arba'asar mukafin klal lo. Maybe not. Maybe what it means is like this. Maybe Jews of unwalled cities celebrate Purim on the 14th, and Jews of walled cities don't celebrate Purim at all. So the Gemara says, great answer. Falav Yisrael minhu. Are they not Jews? What are you talking about? Right? How could it be that a Yid's not going to celebrate Purim? Impossible. So therefore it must be that they're celebrating on the 15th. Va'od mehodu v'at kush ksiv. Furthermore, again, when it speaks about the celebration of the Yom Tov of Purim, it indicates that who's celebrating it? All of the Jews, mehodu v'ad kush, the entire empire of Achashverosh, walled cities, unwalled cities. Ve'ema prazim ba'arbesar. Mukafin ba'arbesar or b'chamesar. But maybe it means like this. Maybe unwalled cities read on the 14th. Walled cities read on the 14th and the 15th. Maybe that's what it means. Kedichsiv, Lios osim es yom 14 lechodesh Adar, ve'es yom 15 b'chol shana. To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you why it doesn't work. Ihaviksiv es yom 14 v'chamisha kidik amrit. If the pasuk would have said they will celebrate the 14th and the 15th, I would have entertained that possibility. Maybe there is such a thing like that, of celebrating 2 days of Purim. However, hashta dichsiv es yom 14 ve'es yom 15 asa es upasik. I will say the way the pasuk is written is to celebrate the 14th and to celebrate the 15th. That extra s, that indicates to us that there are two separate days of celebration. And if you're celebrating on one, by definition, you're not celebrating on the other. We'll say first wide line. Hani bar basar, v'hani b'chamisha asar. So the way the pasuk is worded is it comes to teach me some go ahead and observe Purim on the 14th and some observe Purim on the 15th. Ve'ema prozim ba'ar beisar mukafan ibo ba'ar beisar ba'b'chamisar. So I say like this. So I'll say, here's what I know. Right, the one piece of information that's clear and definitive is what? Other walled cities are celebrating Purim when? On the 14th. Maybe what it means is like this. Unwalled cities have a specific date. Maybe walled cities have the luxury of deciding their day of Purim. Right? In other words, I'm only going to observe one day, but maybe walled cities could choose if it's going to be the 14th or it's going to be the 15th. Amikra, Bizmanehem. Also going back to yesterday's Rasha. Pasuk says, Bizmanehem. Zmano shalzeh, lo zmano shalzeh. No, Zmanehem teaches me that what? Each unique locale, or I should say, each type of city has its own unique time. And the time of an unwalled city is not like the time of a walled city. Maybe walled cities should read on the 13th. Right? In other words, we both say, remember in yesterday's daf, we kind of opened up the possibilities of 11, 12, 13. And by the way, out of 11, 12, and 13, which of the days was the day that the Gemara felt had the most compelling narrative for Kriyas HaMegillah? 13. Right? That's the day of the Nes. That's Zman Kila Lakoli. So maybe walled cities should read on the 13th, to which the Gemara says Kishushan. Now, both if you look at Rashi says Kishushan, it's pretty much like right in the middle of Rashi. Omishani Kishushan, Kevan Delo Ramaz Lacha Kosov Zmana Mukafin. So we'll say, since the Megillah is not explicit as to the date of when walled cities read the Megillah, Eimasu, when it is, Ashkechon Shushan Sha'asu B'Tesvav, Mistabra Sha'osair Shayr the Mukafin. So I will say, Shushan, as we'll see, was a walled city. So since Shushan went ahead and celebrated on the 15th, it makes sense to say other walled cities would celebrate on the 15th as well. To which the Gemara says, Ashkechon Asiya. I will say, now here's what's amazing, and the Gemara made this switch without telling us this. You see, yesterday's daf was all about the reading of the Megillah, what we'll call Zechira, the remembrance. In Purim, there's going to be two different things. There's the reading of the Megillah, which Gemara will call Zechira, and then there is Asiya. Asiya is what? Asiya is Su'uda, having a celebratory meal, Mishloach Manos, sending gifts of food to one another, and Matanos Le'avyonim. Interestingly enough, the psukim that we've been quoting throughout this entire discussion are psukim that speak about Asiya, the celebration of Purim. So let's say now what I've done is I've established that the celebration of Purim for unwalled cities will be on the 14th, and for walled cities will be on the 15th. But Zechira, what about the actual reading of the Megillah? How do I know that Zechira? Ultimately, again, if you look at Rashi says, Ashkechan Asiya, the Mishta v'yamtiv shetehele prozim b'yodal mukafim tesvav. So now I know, based on the psukim, that walled cities celebrate Purim, which means Mishta, Simcha, on the 15th, unwalled on the 14th. But Zechira, the reading of the Megillah, how do I know that? So the Gemara says, Amikra, v'yomim ha'ila niskarim v'na'asim. Pasuk says, these days will be remembered and performed. Iskish, or observed. Iskish Zechira la'asiya. Ultimately, what do you see? We compare the reading of the Megillah to the actual observance of the Yom Tiv. Therefore, once we've established that Purim is observed in walled cities on the 15th and unwalled cities on the 14th, and observed, so when we say observed means what? Suda, Shalach Manos, Matanos Le'avyonim, so too we'll read Megillah on those days as well. Incredible. Masnisin delo ki aitana. To which the Gemara now says, by the way, our Mishnah does not reflect the view of the following Tana. Who this Sanya, but listen to this. This Sanya, Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha Omer, Krochin hamukafin choma mimos achashverosh korin b'chamisha asar. So I'll say, now watch this. Now remember again, the wording in our Mishnah was Krochin hamukafin choma mimos Yoshua ben Nun. Right, walled cities that have a wall from the times of Yoshua ben Nun. Now, we'll say we will discuss how did Yoshua ben Nun get in here, right? What does Yoshua ben Nun have to do with Purim? Okay, we'll come back to that in just a moment. In any event, the point the Gemara is making over here is our Mishnah does not reflect the view of Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, because what does Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha hold? He holds that the definition of a walled city is a city that has a wall at the times of Ahasuerus. And I will say, but it's a pretty logical approach, right? In other words, it's the Purim story. Achashverosh. So the Gemara says, my time of Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha. What's Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha's logic? So Kishushan, because he holds the definition of a walled city, or I should say walled city should follow the paradigm of Shushan. Ma Shushan, Mukafas Chomer. We'll say, remember again, Shushan, which was at the center of the Purim story, and Shushan itself, which as we will see was a walled city. So Ma Shushan, Mukafas Chomer, Mimos Achashverosh, V'koren b'chamishasar. Shushan is the paradigm. Right? Shushan is the paradigm for a walled city. Shushan was a walled city from the times of Achashverosh, and it reads on the 15th, Af kol shamukafas chomer mos Achashverosh, koren b'chamishasar. So to any walled city that has a wall at the time of Achashverosh, by definition, reads on the 15th. So I will say, so now we have a fundamental machlokas. Interestingly enough, we have an agreement about the category, right? Everyone who agrees that there's a category called what? Walled cities. The shaila is a machlokes in the definition of a walled city. The Tana of our Mishnah says it had a wall from the times, I should say not from the times, really I should say at the time of Yoshua ben Nun. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha is saying it had a wall at the time of Achashverosh. So it says, what's at the root of this machlokes? So now, I understand the truth is Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha's position about having off times of Achashverosh is self-explanatory. Right? Shushan is the epicenter of the miracle. It is a walled city, and it has a wall from the time of Achashverosh. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha will say that's the paradigm. If you have a wall at the time of Achashverosh, you read on the 15th. You don't, you read on the 14th. The Tana Didan, my Taima. So we'll say, but what's the logic of our Tana? Right? Why does our Tana go ahead and say the definition of a walled city is from the times of Yoshua ben Nun, or at the time of Yoshua ben Nun? Listen to this. Yolif prazi. He has a gzer shava of prazi. We'll say prazi means city. Ksiv hacha al kin hayuhudim haprazim. It says over here, therefore, this is the pasuk we quoted before, the Jews of the cities, uksiv hasam levad me'are hapraze harbe. So also then he quotes over here from the pasuk from levad me'are hapraze. Right, quotes over here from the pasuk from Devarim. Kol ela arim betzuros choma gavod la'asayim obriach levad me'are hapraze harbe ma'od. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Malahalon. Now we'll say, now the pasuk in Devarim speaks out two cities. It speaks out Kol ela arim betzuros choma. There were walled cities. It's surveying the lands in Eretz Yisrael. There were walled cities and there were unwalled cities. So says the Gemara, listen to this. So ma lahalon mukefes chomim mos Yoshua ben Nun. Just like the walled cities in the pasuk are talking about cities that have a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun. Afkan mukefes choma mimos Yoshua ben Nun. So too, when the Megillah mentions walled cities, it's also talking about walled cities in the times of Yoshua ben Nun. So we'll say, this is really very interesting and exceptionally intriguing because you have a gzera shava from chumash to what? To ksuvim, right? It's not even chumash to, it's chumash to ksuvim. It's a Megillah. So we'll say, so the Rishonim comment on this and discuss the idea that this probably is not like what we would call a regular gzera shava. It's more like a limud. But the point that the Tana is making is we find the same word in two contexts. We find the same word in Devarim, and we find the same word in Megillah Esther. Now, what I want to point out is something very intriguing. Remember, they're making gzera shava based on which word? Prazim. Prazim means what? Unwalled cities. But what the limud says is in the pasuk of Prazim in Devarim, it talks about walled cities as well. And the walled cities in the pasuk in Devarim are walled cities at the time of Yoshua ben Nun. So too again, the walled cities of the Megillah are cities that had a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun. So Bishlam Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha Amar Ketana Didan, the Lesle Prazi. So I understand Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, who holds the definition of a walled city, is a city that had a wall at the time of Achashverosh. He doesn't subscribe to this Gezerah Shava of Prazi. Elatana Didan, my Tana Lamak Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha. But why doesn't our Tana subscribe to Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha's position? My Taima to Islay Prazi. What are you talking about? Why not? Because our Tana holds of the Gezerah Shava of Prazi. To which the Gemara says, no. Hachi ka'amar ela shushan da'avdinon kiman. We'll say, here's the problem. According to our Tana, who accepts the limud of prazi, and tells you that what? That the definition of a walled city is a city that had a wall as of when, or at the time of Yoshua ben Nun. What do you do with Shushan? What do you do with Shushan? We'll say, did Shushan have a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun? Bipashtus not. It wasn't a capital city. So what do you do with Shushan? Because here you have Shushan, technically doesn't have a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun, but yet what? Is a walled city at the time of the Purim story, and what? Is the epicenter of the miracle. So what do you do with Shushan? To which the Gemara says, Amarava va'amila kedi, shiny Shushan, hoel v'nasa b'nes. You're right. Even our Tana, who accepts the limud of prazim, and therefore the definition of a walled city is what? Is a city which has a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun. Shushan will be treated like a walled city, even though it does not fit that criteria. Why? Because as we mentioned before, Shushan is the epicenter of the miracle. Look at Rashi. Rashi is literally right across. Now, it's interesting how Rashi interprets this phrase. Shenita lahem gam mochar la'asos kidas hayom la'rog b'son eim shnei yomim al karchan lo nochu ad tesov v'kin kavodos. So say Rashi understands what was the miracle that happened in Shushan. The miracle that happened in Shushan is that the Jews were given an additional day to fight back against their enemies. So in Shushan they fought on the 13th and on the 14th, and therefore didn't rest and celebrate until the 15th. So it's interesting to see, without Rashi, I would have said, Shani Shushan Hol V'nasa Bones. What does it mean that the miracle happened in Shushan? What does it mean? The miracle unfolded, right? Esther's whole plan was created in Shushan. But it's interesting that Rashi understands the miracle was that the Jews had an additional day to fight back. Okay, in any event, the point the Gemara is going to make over here is that even our Tana, who has a different definition based on prazi, and we'll say the definition of a walled city is a city that had a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun, will agree that Shushan is treated like a walled city, even though it doesn't fit the criteria. Why? Because the miracle unfolded in Shushan itself. Incredible. So Bishlanama Tana Didan Hadirsev Medina V'ir. So I also point out, by the way, the Maharsha points this out, that there's another reason for the Tana. In other words, I will say, it's interesting to find. So the logic of our Tana, to say the definition of a walled city is a city that had a wall from the time of Yoshua ben Nun, because of prazi, the Gzer Shava. But we're also extending, it's not really Gzer Shava. But say, so remember again, here's also, the Maharsha points out, this is also a din in the kavod of Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. That Yerushalayim's identity is one of a walled city. But Yerushalayim did not have a wall at the time of the Purim story. Remember again, Yerushalayim's wall was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel. Right, the grandfather of Vashti, right, the predecessor, two predecessors above, Achashverosh. Right, there is no wall around Yerushalayim. So to create a law that governs walled cities, and to have Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh excluded from that law, when Yerushalayim's identity is one of a walled city, would be degrading to Yerushalayim. So again, that's not the only compelling reason, right? That's not the only, but again, it's definitely part of the time. That's why we're willing to accept the Gzer Shava. That's not really a Gzer Shava, right? It's not a real Gzer Shava. It's a limud. But ultimately, again, a limud that maintains the covenant of Yerushalayim is a limud worth accepting. Incredible. So it's according to our Tana, I understand why the Megillah needs to write Medina Ir V'ir. What does that teach me? Medina, lechalik bein mukafin chomos Yoshua ben Nun, l'mukafas chomos Achashverosh. So we'll say Medina comes to distinguish between walled cities. Cities that had a wall at the time of Yoshua, and cities that had a wall at the time of Achashverosh. And that the definition of a walled city is a city that has a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun, with the exception of Yerushalayim. Ir V'ir nami lechalik bein Shushan l'shara yaros. And also Ir V'ir also comes to distinguish between Shushan and other cities. Now, as we said before, even though Shushan, technically speaking, according to the criteria of our Tana, should be an unwalled city, Shushan is going to be different because the miracle happened there. Elo, the Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, but what's according to Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha? Remember again, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha's logic is the definition of a walled city is what? Walled as of when? As of when? Achashverosh. Bishlama Medina Umedina lechalik bin Shushan l'shara yaros. So I understand the need of Medina distinguishing Shushan other cities. El'ir v'ir l'may asa. But what is ir v'ir? What ir v'ir? What does it come to teach us? Well, it's very interesting. Amlech Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, well, the Tana Didan minecha. According to our Tana, is a Josh of ir v'ir so clear? After all, kevan is le prazi medina umedina lamali. Once you have prazi, I was supposed to say, and you're able to distinguish between two geographic locations, walled cities, unwalled cities. Medina lamali. Why need Medina at all? Elakra ledrasha hudasa. Rather, I will say this pasuk is going to teach us another halacha. Listen to this. This is fascinating. Could Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi who da'asa? I'm sorry. Could Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi who da'asa? Then Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, we'll see this halacha. Right, where is this quoted? The Kaman Gimel base. We'll see it today. Good. So the Gemara says, no, it sounded familiar. So the Gemara says, what does Yeshua ben Levi say? Krach v'chala samuchlo v'chala nira imo nidon kikrach. I will say this is going to be a fascinating halacha that is actually codified in Shulchan Aruch as well. A walled city. I as well say this. Now let's go. Walled city, definite, right? We already know. We adopt whose position in terms of definition of a walled city? Our Tana, right? Our Tana. Definition of a walled city is a city that had a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun. But I just to kind of understand it, it might not have a wall now, right? It doesn't need a wall now. As long as it had a wall at the time of Yoshua ben Nun, that's called a walled city. There's another interesting halacha. Any city that is within ocular range, right? So any city that from which you could see a walled city, or any city that is next samuch to a walled city, has the din of a walled city. Has the din of a walled city. It's a fascinating halacha. We'll see why that is. So the Gemara says, Ad kama, and I will say how what, first of all, so ocular range, I understand. If you could see, you could see. But in terms of samuch, close, how close is close? So the Gemara says, the distance from Chamson to Tveria, which is a mill. So we'll say, so we know a mill. A mill is 2,000 amos. And I will say, just to translate that into more contemporary measurements, a mill is approximately 0.7 miles. 0.7 miles. So 2,000 amos, 0.7 miles. So what's samuch? Samuch is the distance between Chamson and Tveria, which is a mill. To which the Gemara says, Valema mill. Why don't you just say a mill? In other words, why do you have to give me the distance between Chamson and Tveria? First of all, not everybody knows that, so what does that matter? And just tell me a mill. Right? So we'll say, so what you have is an interesting halacha. If you have an unwalled city that is within a mill, right, 0.7 miles of a walled city, that unwalled city celebrates Purim like a walled city. So the Gemara says, to which the Gemara answers, to which the Gemara says, Kamash Malon, the Shiura Demil, Kamahavi, Kechamson Tveria. No, we'll say it's helpful to tell us that the distance of a mill is from Chamson to Tveria. Why? Because we will say, remember again, that helps give us, or at least if you're familiar with those two cities, it helps give us a frame of reference for the measurement of a mill. So really the halacha is, so we'll say interestingly enough, with the Gemara suggesting over here, that what Medina actually teaches us is another halacha. And the halacha is that any city that is either within ocular range or samuch, or close, or within a mill of a walled city will celebrate Purim just like a walled city. And what's the definition of samuch? The distance between Chamson and Tveria, which also happens to be a mill. Incredible. We'll say a beautiful, beautiful Gemara. Two lines are from the bottom, Beis and Beis. So Minatzbach, Sofim Amrim. We'll say Minatzbach are just the letters. Mem, Nun, Tzadik, Pei, Chaf. And I will say, as we're going to see what's unique about these letters, each of these letters have two forms, right? They have one form, they have what we'll call two forms, right? One is what we'll call, let's say, a mem and a mem sophis. Right now, I'm leaving out the word sophis for just a moment, because we're going to see. So the Gemara says, Minatzbach, these letters, Sofim Amrum. The Tzofim, which means the Nevi'im. Rashi says, Nevi'ya Hadoros. The prophets, literally sounds what it's saying is, the prophets created these letters. So the Gemara says, what? V'tizbara v'haksid ela mitzvos she'in navi rashay lechadesh davar me'ata. So both sides, the Gemara seems to be saying like this. The fact that these letters, Mem, Nun, Tzadik, Pei, Chaf, have two forms, that was created by the Nevi'im. To which the Gemara says, really? But yet we learned, Pasuk says, Ve'ila ha-mitzvos. These are the mitzvos, Asher Tziva Hashem es Moshe es Bnei Yisrael b'Har Sinai, teaches us what? That ultimately, again, Nevi'im can't introduce new mitzvos. Now both say, now remember again, the Chazal could introduce new dinim to safeguard biblical mitzvos, but they cannot create brand new mitzvahs. In other words, if somebody decides, you know what, I just thought of a great 614th, right? You can't do that, right? There's no license to do that. So how could it be that the Nevi'im are introducing new forms of the letters of the alphabet? So the Gemara says, no. Va'od amar Rav Chisda, mem v'samich shebeluchos, B'nei Israel Nerbo say this is so beautiful. Furthermore, again, we have these letters, right? We have these letters. How do we know this? Because again, the Gemara says that the mem and samich of the luchos were suspended in the midst of the luchos. So those others will say one of the miracles of the luchos. Rashi says over here, top of Gimel Amud Aleph, B'nei Israel Omdim Shaisa Chaki Kasan Mishnei Evrehen. They both say the luchos were chiseled all the way through. And the amazing part about the tablets was you were able to read them from either side. So think about this for just a moment. If you have the letter Mem in the Luchos, which you have, right, or the letter Samich in the Luchos, which you have, right, what happens? How do you chisel through a Mem or a Samich? Right, you make the letter, but that means the middle piece is not attached to anything. It's suspended. It's suspended right in the middle. So one of the miracles of the Luchos is that the letters were chiseled through and were seen on both sides. But what that definition means is that there was a piece that was suspended. He'll say, for our purposes, what does that mean? These letters were here as part of the Luchos. What do you mean the Nevi'im introduced these letters? These letters were here. So the Gemara says, you're right. So the Gemara says, in Mehava Hava, you're right. The letters were here. V'lo hava yadi, hei be'emtza teva, v'hei be'sof teva, v'asu tzofim v'takinu, persuchin be'emtza teva, ustumin be'sof teva. You're right, Shabbos. So here's what happened. We always knew that for Mem, from Nun, Tzadik, Pei, Ches, there are two forms of the letter. What we didn't know was which forms of the letter. So we'll call them there are open forms and closed forms of the letter, right? Again, the easiest way to illustrate it is if you think about this, a mem, right? So a mem, there's an open mem, and then there's a closed mem. We didn't know which forms of the letter are used when the letter appears in the middle of the word, and which form the letter is used when the letter appears at the end of the word. So the Nevi'im came along and instituted for us that there's a middle mem, and there's a mem sophis, right? There's an end mem. So the Nevi'im came. So again, the Nevi'im didn't introduce the letters. The Nevi'im just told us which letters to use when. To which the Gemara says, but one second. Sof. Ela mitzvah she'in navi asil lechadesh davar me'ata ela shachom v'chazir yistum. To which the Gemara says, but still that would be called introducing something new. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Nothing new is being introduced. Right? We know these menatzbach, these letters have two forms. Over time, for whatever the reason, we forgot which letters were used where, right? Which letters were used where. So the Nevi'im came along and reinstituted and quote unquote reminded us which form of the letter is used in the middle of a word and which form of the letter is used at the end of the word. I just want to point out, just kind of going back to Tainus for just a moment. You remember again, we learned the Gemara was speaking about the people, right? The families, the mishmoros, the 4 mishmoros who came back with Ezra, right? And the families who pledged wood, the carbon eitzim. Isn't it fascinating, right? That I remember I mentioned this before we learned it, how what's forgotten and what's remembered, right? So here you see the Gemara says there was a period of time where we weren't sure which form of the letter to use in the middle of a word and which form of the letter to use at the end of the word. So the Nevi'im came along, we forgot. Again, I don't know this, for some reason, we forgot. We always say, but isn't it incredible? But yet we always remembered who came back with Ezra, right? We always remembered who went ahead and pledged wood for the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, that what's often, we might forget letters at times, but you always remember people who stand up and are counted when they are needed. It's such a dramatic idea. So the Hebrew alphabet, which is at the very core of our existence, we may forget which type of mem to use in the middle of a word or at the end of the word. But the 4 families who came back with Ezra, that we'll never forget. Therefore, the families who stood up and donated wood when the Beis HaMikdash needed it, that we'll never forget. When you stand up and you're counted in a moment of pivotal need, that is remembered for all eternity, even when many other things may be forgotten over time. Incredible. Targum Shatorah, such an incredible Gemara. Targum Shatorah, what we call Targum, the Aramaic translation. I will say, now remember again, Targum as we have it is not simply a translation. Targum, what we'll call Unkelos, as we'll see in just a moment, Targum is a perush, right? If you learn Shtayim Mikra ve'echad Targum, if you happen to learn Targum, you will realize that at the end of the day, Targum is not just a translation into Aramaic, it is a commentary. Who said this Targum? Unkelos Hager. Unkelos, which is why Targum is known simply as Unkelos. Unkelos the convert. Don't let anyone tell you that where you come from defines what you could accomplish. Absolutely amazing. Unkelos the convert. Amru mi pi Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua. So Unkelos wasn't the one. So apparently it came from Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua, and Unkelos was the one who codified it. He codified what we call Targum Unkelos. Targum Shel Neviim. It will say who compiled the Targum of the Neviim. Yonasan ben Uziel. Now remember again, who was Yonasan ben Uziel? He was the primary disciple, primary Talmud of Hillel. So he compiled the Targum of the Nevi'im. So the Gemara says, and that was said, right? Amru mepi Chagai, Zechariah, Umalachi. And that ultimately again was transmitted through the prophets Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi. And when Yonasan ben Uziel did this, listen to this, V'nizdaz Eretz Yisrael, Arba Meos Parsa. The entire land of Eretz Yisrael, 400 parsalas by 400 parsalas, shook. When Yonasan ben Uziel wrote the Targum for Nevi'im, Yotze Sabasko va'amra mihuzeh shegila sisarai libnei Adam, and literally the Shechina said, who is the one who is revealing my secrets to my children? Amad Yonasan ben Uziel aragla va'amar anihu shegilisi sisarecha libnei Adam. Yonasan ben Uziel, it's me, it's your child, it's Yonasan ben Uziel. I revealed the secrets, because Rabbi, remember again, Targum made the Nevi'im much more accessible to the common man. Suddenly, again, there is an explanation in the vernacular. Apparently, Baskel comes out and says, who did this? To which Yonasan ben Uziel says, I did this. Ela lichvodecha asisi shelo yirbu machlokes b'Yisrael. And Yonasan ben Uziel says, I want to tell you why I did this. I didn't do this for my honor, for the honor of my father's home, but rather, again, I did this in order that there should not be machlokes in Klal Yisrael about how to interpret different things in the Nevi'im. So beautiful. Va'od. Bikesh liglos targum shel ksuvim. Then Yonasan ben Uziel wanted to go on to his next project. But I'll tell you something absolutely amazing. What do you see from here? You would have thought you did Targum on Nevi'im, shkayach. You know, what's next? I don't know. You know, you retired to Boca, whatever comes after. You know, doing the Targum on Nevi'im. I will say, there's no such thing as stopping in life. There's no such thing as stopping, right? Life is always a question of what's next. The person does the daf, that's incredible. Finishing Masechta is great. What else? What else is going to become part of my spiritual repertoire, right? What else am I going to do? Yonasan ben Uziel finishes Targum of Nevi'im, he wants to ksuvim. So this time the Baskel comes out proactively and says, stop, don't do Targum of ksuvim. My time, what's the reason for this? Mishum de espe kates Mashiach. Because I will say in ksuvim, in Ksuvim, there are some very esoteric things that happen to be focused on messianic redemption, or messianic arrival. And certain things Choshen Baruch Hu did not want translated for the masses. V'targum shel Torah, so we'll get to that in just a moment. V'targum shel Torah, and Rashi says over here, where do you find Kates Mashiach? Where do you find right information about Mashiach? In Daniel. Sefer Daniel. So therefore, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu proactively stops the project of Yonasan ben Uziel to develop the Targum on the Ksuvim. V'targum shel Torah Onkelos Hager Amru. Is that true that Onkelos was the one who came up with Targum on Torah, or the one who codified Targum on Torah? V'hamarav Ika bar Avin Amrav Chananel Amarav Mai Dichsev. What does the pasuk mean when it says Vayikru b'Sefer Torah Salokim Mefurash V'som seichel v'avinu b'mikra. So watch this. So says the Gemara, listen to how the Gemara darshans this pasuk. Vayikra b'sefer Torah Salokim ze mikra. When it says they read in the Torah of Hashem, that refers to the psukim. Mefurash, right? There was a perush. Ze targum. That refers to targum. And I also want to point out this is a pasuk from Nehemiah. V'som seichel elu apsukim. That refers to how you divide up the verses. V'yavinu b'mikra. They understood the psukim. Elu psikei tamim. That refers to the trop. Others say that's the way to pronounce words. So you see over here that Targum is already associated when? Back with Nehemiah. Before Unkelus Ager, to which the Gemara once again says, you're right. Shachachum v'chazra v'yastum. Rabbi says it's incredible, second time in one daf that we have this idea. Shachachum, something was forgotten and it was reinstituted. Others will say, isn't that absolutely incredible? So Targum was done, you're right. Targum predates Unkelus. Absolutely. But Unkelos, from the mouths of his Rebbeim, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, reconstructed the Targum after it was forgotten. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Maishna darais dos daza udinavi as daza. So say, why is it, right? The Gemara says that when Unkelos made the Targum on Torah, beautiful, and then Yonasan ben Uziel made the Targum, or codified the Targum on Navi. And when he codified the Targum on Navi, what happened? The earth shook. Why did the earth shake for the Targum on Navi and not for the Targum on Torah? To which Gemara says very simple. Daraisa mifresha milsa denevi ika mili dimefarshan v'ika mili dimisasman. It will say it's very simple. In Torah, pretty much everything is explainable. Right? In other words, there's no, we'll say Torah, chamishe chumshe Torah, chumash, Torah. It's not esoteric. It's not meant to be esoteric. Right? The goal of Torah is to be understandable. So there's nothing in Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want to explain. Now again, are there chukim, right? Are there mitzvos that don't seem to have a reason? Yes. So maybe reasons, but there's nothing in Torah that is esoteric, that is supposed to be beyond comprehension. However, dinevi, iki mili dimafarshan, v'iki mili dimasasman. By Navi it's not true. By Navi there are some things that are explained, and by Navi there are some things that are a bit more obscure. And therefore, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so when things that were not understood up until now were suddenly understood, the earth shook. The Gemara gives an example of something that's not readily understood. The Gemara quotes the pasuk from Zechariah, so we actually had this Gemara in Maseches Yoma as well. What does the pasuk say? Bayomahu yigdal ha'mispei b'Yushalayim ki mispeit hadadrimon bebikas megidon. On that day, the eulogy will be great in Yerushalayim, like the eulogy of Hadadrimon in the valley of Megidon. But remember this Gemara? This is talking about which eulogy? Right? The Levaya of the Yetzer Hara in the Messianic era. Right? There's going to be a Levaya for the Yetzer Hara. When Mashiach comes, the Yetzer Hara is going to be geshachten, right? It's going to be slaughtered. And therefore, again, there's going to be a great Levaya with Hespedim. And the Navi says that, right, so we saw like the Nevi'im, the Tzaddikim are going to cry because they're going to say, wow, how are we able to overcome a Yetzer Hara that looked like a mountain? The Rasham are going to cry because the Yetzer Hara is going to look like Kichut HaSaira, just like a little hair, right? How did we not summon up the strength to battle back against that? Everybody's going to cry. So I will say the problem is we have no idea what the mispay, who's Hadadrimon and what's Bikas Megidon. From Rav Yosef says Ilmole Targuma da Haikra Lo Yadana Maikahamar. Were it not for the Targum, right? Were it not for the Targum of Yonasan ben Uziel on this pasuk, I would have absolutely no idea what the pasuk is talking about. So the Gemara says, because what does the Targum say? Bayomahu, on that day, when Mashiach comes and the Yetzer Hara is slaughtered, Yaski mispeda b'Yerushalayim. There will be a eulogy in Yerushalayim, ki mispeda da'achav bar Amri, de katel yaseh hadadrimon ben tavrimon beramos Gilad. There will be a funeral that is as big as the funeral of Achav bar Amri, who was the king of Israel, who was killed by Hadadrimon ben Tavrimon in Ramos Gilad. Right? Achav ben Amri has a massive levaya because he was the Melech of Israel, right? He was the king of Malchus Israel. So the levaya of the Yitzhak will be as big as the levaya of Achav ben Amri. Ukim Hespeda, and the Hespedim, the eulogies will be as intense. The Yoshio bar Amon de Kotel Yasei Paro Chagira Bebikas Megido. The eulogies will be as intense as ultimately again as the eulogies for Yoshio ben Ammon, who was killed by Paro Chagira. But remember again, Yoshio was the last word. Vaikone Yirmiyo al Yoshio. We say this in Kinnos on Tisha B'Av. The death of Yoshio was the fall of the Jewish people. Was the beginning of the destruction. So ultimately, again, that's what the Navi means. That the Levi will be as large as the Levi of Achav Bar Amri, who was killed by Hadadrimon, and ultimately the Hespedim, the eulogies will be as intense as the eulogies delivered on behalf of Yoshio, the king of Yehuda, who was killed in the valley of Megiddo. But again, I will say, you would not know what this pasuk meant were it not for the Targum. Incredible. So we'll say the Gemara now switches gears for just a moment. Now that we're talking about, again, esoteric passages. So the Gemara says, Daniel, pasuk from Daniel. V'ra'isi ani Daniel levadi es hamara, v'anashim asher hayu imi, asher lo ra'u es hamara, aval charod gidola nafla aleim, v'yivarchu behechavei. So we'll say, Daniel says, I, Daniel, myself, saw the vision. And the people who were with me, they did not see the vision, but they were seized by a great fear fell upon them. They ran away and they hid. So maninu anashim. We'll say, who are these people with Daniel who did not see the vision but were fearful of what they saw? In other words, we'll say, so remember, the Navi over here is describing Daniel's great revelation with the multiple chariots, multiple heads. Good. So the Gemara says, who are these people? Who are the people with Daniel? None other than the prophets, Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Yet, Daniel sees the vision, they don't see it. Inhu adifu minei, v'iu adif minayu. In certain respects, Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi were greater than Daniel, and in other respects, Daniel was greater than them. Inhu adifu minei, we'll say first wide line, the inhu nevi, right? They were greater than Daniel. Why? Because they were prophets. Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi are prophets. V'iu lo navi. We'll say, technically speaking, right? Daniel's not a Navi compared to Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Yet, Ihu Adif Minayu, yet Daniel was greater than Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Why? Di'u Chazu, right? Daniel saw the vision. Ve'inhu lo Chazu. But yet Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi did not see the vision. V'chene achar de lo Chazu my taimu avisu. We're supposed to listen to this. So, but if Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi did not see the vision, why were they afraid? Right? Why were they afraid? What were they fearful of? To which the Gemara says, and I will say, Rashi just points out over here, De'inhu nevi'i shenisnavu l'Yisrael b'shlichuso shal makom v'hu lo nishtalach l'Yisrael b'shum nevuah. But just to be clear, Daniel was a prophet. When the Gemara says Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi were prophets, Daniel was not. What that means is they were prophets who delivered messages for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Klal Yisrael. Daniel never delivered a prophecy to Klal Yisrael, which I will say something so amazing. That what makes a real Navi, not just that you have prophecy, what makes a real Navi is what you do for your people. Right? If you're a prophet whose prophecies are delivered to the nation, then you're reckoned amongst the Nevi'im. But if you're just someone who has incredible visions, but your visions are not shared or impact the Klal, then you're not counted amongst the Nevi'im. Incredible yesod. You work on yourself, your own ruchnius, that's incredible. But if your ruchnius does not impact the Klal, then that is stunted ruchnius. But if a person works on themselves and then uses that newfound growth to impact those around them, that's a Navi. That's a Gadol. So I will say, so if Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi did not see the vision, why were they afraid? Afagav is incredible. Afagav de'inu lo chazu, mazlahu chazu. We'll say, even though they did not see the vision, they're mazel. Rashi says, sar shel kol adam lamala. See, I will say, each of us have malachim. Right? We have a sar. A sar. Sar literally means a minister, but the idea is each of us have malachim who are like our guardian angels, right? Mimini Michael, Mismoli Gavriel, right? As we say, right? I have malachim all around me. Not only that, I have particular malachim that are assigned to me. We know this again from Gemara Maseches Shabbos. The Gemara Maseches Shabbos says what happens? A person comes home from shul on Shabbos night. He's escorted by two malachim. What do the two malachim want to see? It's interesting Gemara. They want to see what's happening in my house, right? Is there seder? Is the table set? Is the home made up? Right? Is there a spirit of tranquility and Shabbos in the home or not? Right? So I have malachim who come with me every step of the way. So this is incredible. Even though Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi did not see the vision, they're angels, they're malachim saw the angels. Saw the vision, and apparently, again, the angels, their angels were struck by the vision, and as a result, ultimately, again, Chagai Zechariah Malachi were seized with fear, even though they did not know what they were seized with fear by. And I will say this yields an incredible idea. The Gemara says, Amar Avina Shma Mina Haiman Demivis Af Agav Di'ihu Lo Chazi Mazlayo Chazi. I will say, what do you see from here? You see from here that ultimately, again, sometimes in life a person just becomes fearful. And it's not clear why I have become fearful. Why I become fearful. So we'll say, generally in life, if I'm seized by fear, and I don't know why I've been seized by fear, chances are, even though I haven't seen anything, my mazel or my malach has seen something. And I am fearful now as a result of what my malach has seen. So my takante. So we'll say, it's incredible. So what do you do in life if suddenly you're seized by fear, which means that your malach saw something that's overwhelming? What should you do? What should be the reaction? To which the Gemara says, Likri Kriya Shema. What should you do? Say Shema. We'll say, what an incredible Musar Haskil. If you're fearful of something in life, what's the reaction of a Jew in a time of fear? Say Shema. Which I will say means what? You see, when I'm fearful, the best thing you could do is anchor yourself to something that is stable. Right? And what's the most stable thing in this entire world? Hatzur, Tamim Palo HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when I am fearful in life, what's the reaction of a Jew in a state of fear? Kriya Shema. I'm not even asking God for anything. I'm not asking for anything. But when I'm fearful and unsure of things, the best thing I could do is anchor myself to the Ribono Shel Olam. The Gemara says, but what happens? But say, what happens if I'm in a dirty place and I can't say Shema? Right? You can't say Shema anywhere. Let's say I'm in a place that has an odor, a place that has garbage or something else. I can't say Shema there. So what do? This is incredible. Linshof miduchte arba garmidi. What should you do? Jump Dalaramas to a new place. Jump Dalaramas. Okay, so what does that mean? So perhaps what it means is like this. Perhaps what it means like this. Shirbo say, sometimes the most overwhelming part of fear is a lack of control, right? When I'm fearful of something, often I'm fearful because I perceive I lack control. What does it mean to go ahead and jump Dalaramis? Jumping Dalaramis means I'm affecting some level of change in my circumstances, right? I'm moving myself from here to there. Is it a big dramatic change? No, but it's a change in my life from location A to location A. I will say sometimes in life when we are gripped by fear, often the next stage of that is a feeling of powerlessness and helplessness. The best way to combat fear, helplessness, powerlessness is seize the reins of your life and affect some level of change. Even if it's a very small change, right? Even if it's a very minute change. Even if it's just moving from here until there, don't lose yourself in the helplessness and powerlessness of life. Take back the reins and affect some level of change. So we'll say, isn't this absolutely incredible? Say, if I'm fearful, and therefore I feel helpless, powerless. Step one, Shema. Anchor myself to the root of all stability in this universe, and that is the Ribono Shel Olam. But let's say I can't say Shema. Sometimes people can't say Shema for a variety of reasons, either because of my external circumstances or because of my internal circumstances. What do? Jump Dalaramas to a new location. Affect some level of change. Do something small in your life. Seize the reins. Take the power back. Do not fall into the grips of powerlessness and helplessness. Move yourself from one point to another, even if it's a very small change. So the Gemara says, what happens if you can't do either of those things? Ve'ilo, I can't say Shema. I can't move myself. Leimahachi, say this. Iza de beitabcha shmeina minoi. Right? You know what? The sheep, right? The sheep and the butcher is fatter than me. In other words, go pick on someone else. Right? Go pick on someone else. Right? Please, right? This is almost like a last-ditch effort that please, whatever is going to happen, whatever is going to occur, you know, let it be visited upon the fattened sheep of the butcher's block and not me. An incredible Gemara. So it says the Gemara back to Megillah. Fahashra da amris medina medina ir ve'ir ledrasha. So now that I know that what Medina ir ve'ir comes to teach you drushes, as we saw in Beis Amud Beis. Mishpacha l'may as Rabbi said, this is incredible. What do I use the phrase mishpacha u'mishpacha? Every mishpacha has to celebrate Purim. Okay, like what does that teach me? This is incredible. Am Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina lahavi mishpachos kahuna ulevia shemevatlin avodasan ubaim lishma mikra Megillah. Wow, The will say Mishpacha tells me that even Kohanim and Leviim stop what they're doing in the Beis Hamikdash in order to come and hear the Megillah. Dam Rav Yehuda Marav, Kohanim ba'avodasan, uLeviim b'duchanan, v'Yisrael ma'amadan. We'll say now all of this makes sense to us. Kohanim in their avoda, Leviim in their duchan, which means they're singing, Yisrael from their ma'amados, back to Maseches Tainis. Kulan mevatan avodasan uba'in l'shma mikra Megillah. We'll say mikra Megillah is so important that it even trumps avoda. So mishpacha mishpacha, no matter what mishpacha you're a part of, Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, stop whatever you're doing and come and hear the Megillah. Taina, right? So that supports this. Kohanim ba'avodasan uLeviim b'duchanan v'Yisrael ma'amadan kulan mevatan avodasan uba'in l'shma mikra Megillah. But we'll say, so again, that's what the Gemara is dashing from the word mishpacha mishpacha. Because the Havamina is what? You might have thought, listen, if you're a Kohen doing the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, you don't stop for Megillah. Right? After all, avodah is doraisa, so Megillah is drabanan. No, mishpacha. Whatever family you're a part of, Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Kohanim stop their avodah, Leviim stop their duchan, they're singing, Yisrael stop their ma'amados. Everyone comes to your mikra Megillah. Mikan samchu shal beis Rabbi, shemevatlin Talmud Torah, u'ba'in l'shmoa mikra Megillah. Listen to this, Rabbi said, this is incredible. From here, says the Gemara, that Beis Rabbi said, what do you see from here? That we even stop Torah learning in order to go ahead and what? In order to go ahead and come and hear the Megillah. And come here to the Megillah. Shabbos says, interesting, I'll just point out, Tosas, points out, Top Tosas of Mevatlin points out, it sounds like there's like a conflict. You could either do either or. Absolutely not true. There's plenty of time to do both the Avodah and the Megillah. What Tosas points out is there is a conflict right at the beginning of the day. Because right at the beginning of the day, where there is this reason Makdim Mitzvahs from Megillah, and also Avodah, that's where there could be a potential conflict, says Tosas. So when there's a conflict, ultimately, again, the Gemara says that Allah Kalamaisa Megillah will win out. But I will say what's incredible about this is, in the house of Rebbe, in the yeshiva of Rebbe, they said, let's see, Kal v'chomer me'avoda. So the Gemara says, Uma avoda shi chamura mevatlin, Talmud Torah lo kol shekin. So we'll say, in the Yeshiva Rebbe, they said like this, if Mikra Megillah is so important that literally it trumps avoda, service in the Beis HaMikdash, then certainly it trumps learning, Talmud Torah, because avoda is more important than Torah. To which the Gemara says, really? Va'avoda chamura me Talmud Torah, is that true? Avodah is more important than learning. V'aksiv, we learned. Vayi biyos Yoshua biyericho, vayisa einov vayar, v'ne ish omeid l'negdor. Both said this is incredible. Vayishtachu la'apav. So listen to this. Yoshua is in Yericho, and he lifts up his eyes and he sees that there's a man standing opposite him, and Yoshua bowed down. So the Gemara says, 1 second. How did he bow down? You're not allowed to say Shalom Aleichem to someone at night, meaning utilizing the Shem Hashem, out of a concern that maybe the person is not a person, maybe he's a shade. To which the Gemara says, no. Shani Hazam the Amrle Ki Ani Sar Tzva Hashem. This unidentified person, right? But it doesn't mean to someone who you know, right? But it means, right? Ultimately, again, this unidentified person identified himself to Yoshua. Ani Sar Tzva Hashem. I'm an angel of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'dilma Meshakri. Maybe he's lying. It has happened that people have lied, right? So maybe he's lying. He's not really a malach. Gemiri dilam mafkishim shmai levatala. No. That malachim do not go ahead or even shade him. Do not go ahead and use Hashem's name in vain. So we'll say, now watch this. So the malach appears to Yoshua. And ultimately, again, malach appears to Yoshua. So the Gemara says, Amrlo. So the malach says, I come with a message. So the Malach is coming to give Yoshua Moshe, saying, Yoshua, yesterday, you guys did not offer up the afternoon Tamid, and today you didn't learn. Amar lo Iza mehen basa. Yoshua says, tell me, Malach, for which transgression did you come specifically? Did you come because we didn't offer the Tamid? Did you come because we didn't learn? Amar lo atabasi. He said, I came for the transgression of right now, for Torah. I came because you did not learn Torah today. So the Gemara says, Miyad ve'yolan Yoshua hu b'socha emek. That night Yoshua slept, or literally dwelled, in the emek, in the valley. Am Rabbi Yochanan, what does this mean? Amud Beis, Am Rabbi Yochanan melamed shalon bo'omka shel halacha. Immediately upon hearing this, we'll say dramatic exchange. Immediately upon hearing this, Yoshua goes ahead and dwells in the valley of Halacha. So Yoshua hears that the Malach, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was upset that they did not learn Torah. We'll say now again, I do want to point out, they are engaged in a campaign to go ahead and overtake Eretz Yisrael, but nevertheless, again, I will say Torah's Torah, and the Malach says the whole nation didn't learn Torah. There's culpability for you as the leader for that. Immediately, Yoshua rectifies that, and that night, literally again, it's a play on words. Vayolan Yoshua balayla hahu besoch ha'emek. He literally slept or dwelled in the valley of Halacha. So I'll say, the point over here is, what do you see from here? Something very interesting. The Malach is coming to Yoshua, he did two things wrong. Number one, you didn't offer the Talmud Shavin Abayim, and you didn't learn. Yoshua says essentially, which is worse? To which the Malach says what? Which one is worse? Yeah. Negation of Torah. Now both say, this is problematic, because what did we just say before? In the yeshiva of Rebbe, they would suspend all learning to allow the Talmidim to go ahead and learn, to go ahead and read the Megillah. Why? Because at the end of the day, that if Megillah trumps Avoda, and Avoda is more important than Torah, then certainly we should suspend the learning to allow people to go hear the Megillah. But from here you see that Avoda is not more important than Megillah. Right? From here it sounds like that Allah Chalamaisa, right? That Torah is more important than Avoda. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Shobar Unya, Gadol Talmud Torah, Yosamehak Ravas Tamidin. Furthermore, again, Rav Shobar Unya says that Talmud Torah is even greater than Karbanos. Shneimar Atzabasi. Shabasi, you see from here that Torah is even greater than Avodah. So which one is it? They will say, watch this. Lokasha hadirabim hadiyachid. It depends on what kind of Torah. They will say, ultimately, again, there is the Torah of the Rabbim and there is the Torah of the Yachid. Right? Torah of the Rabbim, communal Talmud Torah, is greater than Karbanos. But Torah learned by an individual, that Karbanos is greater than that. Rosh Hashanah is such a striking idea. We'll say, that we often think that really there's no difference if we learn Torah as part of a group, as part of a chevra, berabim, or we learn as individuals. To which the Gemara says there is a dramatic difference. Torah of the Rabbin, I will say it's a different kind of Torah. We know this because we come here every morning, right? There's a different Torah when you learn it as part of a group. There is a different Torah when you learn it as, right? You could ingest the same information, right? I know this. I could listen to a shir and ingest the same information, but experientially and spiritually, it's not the same Torah. Torah you learn on your own. Torah you learn as a yachid, has a particular koach. But Torah you learn as part of the Rabbim. Torah I learn as part of the collective. That Torah, Bosa, is even more powerful than Karbanos. Isn't that absolutely amazing? Every single day I yearn for Karbanos. Every single day I say Karbanos. I want the Beis HaMikdash. And yet what? The Torah I learn as part of a collective, as part of a group, is even more powerful than Karbanos. Incredible. So the Gemara says, the Yachid Kala, is that true? That the Torah of an individual is less important than Karbanos? Vatnan, we learned Nashim b'moed ma'anos avalom etapchos. Shabbos said this is actually interesting, talking about the morning practices that they used to have. So women on Chalamoid ma'anos. Rashi says ma'anos means that ultimately again they would cry together. Ma'anos they would call out avalom etapchos. Tosfos points out there's onos, mekononos, and metapchos. Onos is everyone crying out together. Mekononos is responsive crying. And metapchos means like clapping your hands together, like as a display of grief, or hitting one's hand against their leg or against their chest as a sign of grief. So women on Chalamoid, right? Ma'anos, they can cry out. Avalom metapchos, they can't clap. When I say clap, I don't mean Andreas clapping. I mean like clapping as a display of mourning. This is on Chalamoid. You have curtailed mourning practices. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, im hayu smuchos lemita metapchos. If they're close to the funeral bier, they could even go ahead and clap their hands in grief. Biorashe chadashim, b'chanukah, b'purim, ma'anos u'metapchos. But again, on Rosh Chodesh, on Chanukah, and Purim, ma'anos metapchos. Bazeh, avalo mekonenos. Ultimately, again, but no mekonenos. In other words, we both say no responsive crying, or responsive crying. Yeah. V'amar Rabba bar Huna, ein moed bifnei Talmid Chacham. when it comes to the death of a Talmud Chacham, Rabosai, none of these halachos apply. Kol shekein Chanukah uPurim. So what do you see from here? You see from here that when a Talmud Chacham dies, the kavod we give to a Talmud Chacham who's an individual, right, goes ahead and trumps all of these halachos which curtail mourning on Chol Hamoed, Chanukah, Purim, to which the Gemara says, that's apples and oranges. Kavod Torah ka'amrit, you're talking about Kavod Torah. Right? So we're talking about two different things. Kavod Torah, honor that you give to a Talmud Chacham, so Kavod Torah di yachid chomer. Talmud Torah di yachid klal. To which the Gemara says, say two different things. There's Talmud Torah di yachid and Kavod Torah di yachid. Kavod Torah, the honor that you give to a Talmud Chacham, that's incredibly chomer. That's incredibly important, right? And that'll trump other halachas. Talmud Torah, the Torah learning of an individual, Abosai, when it's the Talmud Torah of a yachid, avoda ultimately again is more important. Sacrificial service is more important. When it's Talmud Torah de Rabbim, the Talmud Torah of the collective is more powerful than any other force on earth. Rabosai, I'll just read one more line, then we'll have to stop. Amar Rava, pshita li avodu mikra Megillah. Mikra Megillah Adif. Mid Rabbi Yossi Bachanina. Bosai, so now, therefore, what we're going to do now, Bosai, we'll start this and then we'll have to stop right. Actually, Bosai, fine, just read this line. So Rava says, it's clear to me that where there is a conflict between avoda, sacrificial service, and Mikra Megillah, and the reading of the Megillah, ultimately, again, Mikra Megillah is more important. Right? Mikra Megillah wins out. Mid Rabbi Yossi Bachanina. Bosai, that's what we just learned before in Amud Aleph. Right? That Mishpacha Mishpacha teaches me that what? Kohanim, Leviim, Yisrael, Ma'amados, all of that stops from Mikra Megillah. Talmud Torah, Mikra Megillah Adif. Similarly again, Talmud Torah, Mikra Megillah, if there's a clash, who wins? Mikra Megillah. How do we know that? Midesamchu shal beis Rebbe. Because that's what Rebbe said. In the yeshiva of Rebbe, they suspended all shiurim. Why did they suspend all shiurim? Because Rebbe said, if Mikra Megillah is powerful enough to suspend avoda, it's certainly powerful enough to suspend Talmud Torah. So we'll stop over here for today. We're going to start in Mirat Hashem tomorrow morning at 5:45 again. By tomorrow, we'll get caught up in Mirat Hashem. Short Amud Aleph tomorrow. Shkach, Hebron.